This is Todd, back in the Victory 4x4 garage. Today, we're going to be installing our Blitz sliders on a Lexus GX470. Okay, so the first step is getting the little plastic plugs out of the way here. Best way is just to grab a flathead screwdriver, come in here and wiggle this center part out. Takes a little bit of convincing. And then that pops right out. Next, we have to go and open the doors. The next step is pulling out these plastic clips. Now, there's these 4 on the back door and there's 6 on the front door. What we found is kind of the easiest way is to use one of these trim tools and then just come in here and pop them out. Now, the way these are made, you could push these sides in with something very skinny and flat to get them to pop out. We don't really have the correct tool, so we just go ahead and use this. We haven't had any break on us or anything like that, so that's kind of the way we go. Okay, once you've done the plastic up top, the next step is to go ahead and just unplug the lights here. You just have to push that in and pull that connector out. After that, we're going to go ahead and remove the bolts that hold the brackets up into the body. They are a 12mm head. And there's 3 separate brackets we're going to do that to. Okay, now as you take the final 2 bolts out, it is going to want to fall, so you're going to want to go ahead and support it as you're removing these bolts. Once you have the bolts out, go ahead and open the doors and remove the step right off the vehicle. Okay, so now once you have everything undone, there is a clip that's behind here that we just have to pull off. Okay, so once we have this step off, we're going to need to do a couple things. One of which is we're going to reuse most of this wiring harness. We don't need the actual plugs, so just to save a minute, we're going to go ahead and cut the wires here. Once you have it cut, the easy way to pop these out is to go ahead and take a trim tool or a screwdriver, just push it in sideways as you pull up a little bit. These pop right up out of the hole. And you're going to do this for the whole length, front and rear of the step. And then we're going to go ahead and cut the plug off on this end also. Okay, so the next step is that we need to trim this plastic to fill in the gap on the fender, and we are going to go ahead and cut it along the whole length so that you can snap this back up under. That way all of the holes where the clips came out of are filled and you don't have to do anything special to be able to hold this piece on. Now, your Lexus might have the front clips up here broken. This one does. So there is the possibility that you're going to need to glue these back on either with some 3M tape or something similar. And we're going to go ahead and do just a little bit of melting back together on these corners where these 2 pieces are broke, because we are going to cut across the bottom of that. Okay. Now for this side over here, we're going to go ahead and throw some 3M blue tape on here. Little wrinkles never hurt anybody there. Okay, now to be able to fill the gap we need, we're going to come down 1 1/4 inches all the way across here. So go ahead and measure down. And then go ahead and just connect your lines. Okay, now to connect the lines, I find it easy to use this thinner masking tape and then come along and then we'll follow that line there. Now, for going along under here, the body line actually disappears a little bit, so we're actually going to come up on this body line here, and then we're going to follow this crease along the rest of the step. Okay, so once you have your line drawn, there's multiple different methods you could use to cut this. You could use a body saw, sawzall, hacksaw even. If you really felt like some punishment, you could even use an X-Acto knife. We prefer to use a cutoff wheel on a grinder, and then we'll follow that up with a grinding pad to smooth it out, even it out. Now, in every instance, it's always better to cut it just a little bit long and then grind it back a little bit flat to make sure that you're not getting it uneven or anything like that to begin with. Once we've cut the front side to get this corner, I'm going to go ahead and come from the back side to go ahead and cut the rest off. Once you get down to this end, we're going to go ahead and cut it long down here. This end is able to be trimmed with it on the vehicle, so that's the way we're going to go to get it lined up perfectly where we want it. Okay, once you've cut across the whole thing, go ahead and lift it up out of the way, and then this can all be discarded. Okay, once you have this piece trimmed, we're going to go ahead and reinstall it on the vehicle. That way it holds it steady so that we can trim up the bottom and it's nice and even. Okay, now that we have it installed back on the vehicle, you'll notice that there's a rubber seal here. It actually comes down fairly far. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try to trim this up so that it sticks up behind that. While keeping this angle, we want to keep a little bit of that lip there for rigidity. And then along the underside of here, there's a body line that runs along there, and we're going to attempt to trim near there. These are hidden pretty well by the doors, especially even the way they're cut here. So this doesn't have to be perfect on the way back. Just as close to perfect as you'd like it to be. So now I am going to use a flap disc on an angle grinder. We find it works really well. It can very quickly eat through, so it does require a gentle touch. You could use a sander, a file, anything like that. The plastic's fairly soft and easy to manipulate, so whatever works best for you, but we're going to go ahead and use the flap wheel. Now, if you are using a flap wheel like this, it's important to remember you want to try to use the most distance on the pad as possible to keep a straight line, and you want to keep it moving. If you let it sit, it's just going to eat right into it. Once you've got this part evened up, go ahead and just do the whole length of it. Okay, now it's time to wire up your rock lights. We're going to use the harness that we pulled earlier and cut the ends off from. The first step is go ahead and feed it behind the brackets on both sides. And you'll notice on the harness, one side is longer than the other. The longer side goes towards the front. So since this is the driver's side, this is the front of our slider. Now, once you have that, you'll notice our rock light wires are really, really long. So we're going to go ahead and cut them significantly shorter. Okay, you're going to go ahead and grab it and just bend it over a little bit and score it with a razor blade twist it a little bit, bend it, score it again, and it should break versus cutting deep into the wires. Once you have that, go ahead and pull it off, and you'll see the red and black wires exposed. Okay, so on the factory, you have a white with a red tracer and a red wire, and then you have on the LED, you have the red and the black. This one's actually fairly simple. You're just gonna put red to red and white to black. So take the supplied butt connectors. We're gonna go ahead and strip these. Okay, and then we're just gonna go ahead and crimp these on. Give them a little tug just to make sure. After that, we go ahead and just shrink them up. We use the heat gun. You could use like a Bic lighter or just some heat source. Okay, once you've shrank it up, go ahead and do the same on the other end. If your vehicle comes equipped with the KDSS system, we need to move a few things because of this. On the other side, the frame rail is cleared. The only thing you have to do is unbolt the parking brake cable. So if you don't have this system, this side is also really easy to do. But let me show you the few things that we need to take care of because of this system. We're gonna need to remove this skid plate here. The one in the back is actually not in the way, so it can stay. So you might notice the bolts look a little bit newer than, well, everything around it. As we were prototyping these and getting the mounts made, we pulled them out and somehow lost them. So we replaced them for the sake of this video. So yours are probably not gonna look this nice, but they are a 12 millimeter. We're gonna need to remove the bolt that holds this bracket and this bracket on. Okay, so there is a hole here that we're going to use for the bracket. Now, you might find that yours has a little bit of rust in it, depending on the age and how your vehicle is used. Now, that's an 8 by 1.25, so it's always better to tap that out a little bit than to try to run a bolt in there, get it stuck, and break it off. Okay, now since we're not gonna be reusing this bolt hole, we're gonna go ahead and take this bracket off the lines and get it out of the way. Now, if you are running our skid plate, you're gonna need to actually remove both bolts and drop this side down to get the bracket in. The bracket's actually gonna go above the skid plate here. Okay. Okay, next we're gonna go ahead and draw this one snug just to bring it up against the frame where it needs to be. We don't want to tighten it too much because as we tighten these, we're going to need it to draw in tight to the frame. So now the easiest way to get a socket on this lower bolt is actually to use an extension with a short socket. And that allows you to get around the line there without having to get at it with an end wrench. Okay, we've got that one snug. Now, we're gonna go ahead and run this self-tapping screw into the hole on this side of the bracket. Okay, so now these brackets have 4 holes. The driver's side here, you're going to be using the inner hole for the front right here for this already threaded hole. Now on the other side, you're actually going to be using the outside hole with one of the self-tappers. The other side, you can drill a hole and run the self-tapper up in through. Now to do that, it's a 5/16 inch drill bit, and then just center the hole in there, drill it up in. Same on the other side, you're just gonna need to drill a hole. This hole up here on both sides, you cannot actually get into it with a regular drill to be able to drill it straight. If you have a right angle drill and you have a short enough drill bit, you can go ahead and drill that one out and put a self-tapping screw in it also. If you don't have that capability, it is okay to leave that hole without a bolt in it. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and drill this one out over here and run our self-tapper up in. Again, we have our 5/16 drill bit. Okay, now these self-tapping bolts, you can see they have the notch here on the end to actually cut the threads as they go up in. It uses a 9/16 socket on it, and it's actually easiest to use power tools to be able to get these to bite and go up in. And then go ahead and tighten the other fasteners that you had, and this bracket's installed. Okay, so next we're going to install this front bracket. Now, the hole here is actually tapped with an 8 by 1.25. There's nothing in it from the factory, so you're most likely going to have to tap that out. But we're going to take our bracket, set it up here to that. Now, we're going to want to push the bracket firmly up against the frame rail so it sits level. And then go ahead and just snug that up so it stays there. And then we need to drill this hole, and we actually need to drill the two going up into the frame from the bottom. Once you've got your bottom two holes drilled and your self-tappers put in, go ahead and drill this one out. And then go ahead and run your self-tapper in. Now you can go ahead and tighten the top bolt all the way, and then we're ready to put the next set of stanchions on. Okay, for the next step, we're going to install the stanchions. Now, you could put the front or the rear on first, it doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and throw the front on. As you can see, there's an arrow right there that points up. That goes up. And then you simply put your bolts in and put a nut on the back side. Okay, now to do the next two on the top, it's a little bit trickier. So we recommend getting an 11/16 end wrench. Go ahead and put the flange nut in it. And then you're actually going to sneak it up in here by the bolt hole. And use the wrench to hold the nut as you start it. Theoretically. Okay, now the back side, because we have this big cutout, we actually don't need to do the wrench trick. You just go ahead and slide this up over. And then I find it easier to start with one of the front bolts just to get it in place and help hold it. Go ahead and put one of the rear ones in here on the top. Okay, so once you've got the front and rear brackets bolted on, go ahead and push the rear bracket all the way up, and then we're going to go ahead and snug these back here. We're going to leave the front one loose, and after we put the sides on, that's what we're going to use the front to adjust and get the exact spacing that we want. Okay, so if you have the KDSS system, you're going to find that you need to remove the top bolt over here in this corner that goes into the frame rail that actually holds the parking brake cable up in there. It's because the bolt on this side here, you can't actually get a wrench in with the lines in that. So you need to take the bolt from this frame bracket out to be able to tighten the one on the side there on the top. So when you're mounting these onto the vehicle, you'll notice that we have 3 sets of holes here. The brackets only have 2. So to make these be able to fit both sides, we actually have the brackets set up this way. Now, you're only going to be using the front 2 holes on both brackets in relation to the vehicle. On the left side, it'll be these. On the right side, it'll be these. To mount them to the brackets, you're just going to be using these 3/8 bolts with the serrated nut. Okay, so this next part is a little bit easier if you have a helping hand. We're actually going to lift it up and set it on the stands. and then just go ahead and start one bolt on each end. That way you can put all the rest in without fear of it falling. Okay, now go ahead and put the rest of the bolts in, and then we can move on to adjusting it. So to be able to reach the inside bolt holes on all 4 corners when you need, you can actually go through the jack hole here. And the easiest way to do it is to just take the nut and lay it against on the inside and move it until you find the hole with the bolt sticking through. It's just really, really easy to be able to reach through and start it on this side versus trying to reach all the way up and in on the back side. Okay, you're going to want to center your boat side to side, and then on the back mount, go ahead and hold it up in and snug up these. You don't want them insanely tight, but go ahead and snug them so they stay, so that we can get our measurement reading so that we can tell how high up we need to go on the front. Okay, so now in the front, you're going to want to push the boat side up while pulling the mount down a little bit, and then go ahead and snug these bolts up also. Okay, now as you're tightening these up some, you might get that the nut just kind of wants to spin in there. You're only going to need to put a light amount of pressure on it. So like these back ones, just reach up through and put your finger on it lightly, and you'll feel it grab and stop spinning. Once you have those all tight, then we're going to go ahead and set our gap. Now, we're going to set this one mainly by eye. If it's something that you are very particular about, go ahead and measure down from the bottom line of the door here down to the top of the slider to make them equal. We're fairly even here. We need to go up just slightly. Now you can do this one of a couple ways. You can just kind of reach in it by hand. You could come under here with a jack. You could have a buddy help you. The object is just to get it close to where you want it height-wise. And then you're going to come in here and tighten up the bolts on the mount on the inside. Now, if those are a little bit snug, you might have to put just a little bit extra force on them, or you might have to loosen them up some to get it to move. So if it's not going the way you want, but you know there's a little more adjustment, check that the bolts aren't too tight before you just ram it up there or anything, so that you're not bending or tweaking anything. Once you've got one snug, go ahead and check your gap, make sure it's where you want it to be, and then go ahead and tighten all the rest of the bolts up. And that is how you install our Blitz sliders for a Lexus GX470. If you have any questions on these or any other products that we offer, don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@victory4x4.com or give us a call at 269-459-8447.